$1 more than I would have if this deal did not happen.
Okay, listen close, because what just happened shook the entire fight world at its core. The UFC didn't just sign a media rights deal, they detonated one. A colossal, history-shattering, never-seen-before 7-year agreement with Paramount worth a staggering $7 billion that instantly rewrote the rules of combat sports. And then came the real shockwave, the death of pay-per-view. Completely erased. Gone. Every single massive fight card, every headline war, every championship night suddenly locked behind one affordable streaming subscription. No barriers. No extra fees. No turning back. Fans erupted. Social media exploded. Celebration turned into chaos, hype turned into hysteria, and the future felt unstoppable. Champagne corks flew in executive offices, laughter echoed through boardrooms, and Dana White stood tall, calling it the dawn of a glorious new era for MMA. It felt untouchable. It felt inevitable. It felt perfect. And then the silence broke. Justin Gaethje, the highlight, the living legend, the king of fight of the night bonuses, stepped into the spotlight at UFC 30 for Media Day. Cameras rolling. Mics open. World watching. And in 6 cold, surgical words, the fantasy collapsed. I'm not getting $1 more. No anger. No drama. Just truth. The kind that slices. The kind that lingers. Because just days earlier, Daniel Cormier had told the world fighters were finally winning, more money, more benefits, more security, because of this very deal. 2 narratives. 1 future. 1 lie. And no one knew which one was about to explode next.
I hear Daniel Cormier saying that everybody's going to get paid more on this card.
The story the UFC executives were selling, the version Dana White himself kept feeding the world, was completely different, almost cinematic. He hinted at rising bonuses, bigger performance payouts, richer rewards for greatness, whispering that the new era would flood fighters with opportunity. The narrative was clean, polished, irresistible. Everyone wins, everyone eats, everyone gets paid. The future was painted in gold. But then Justin Gaethje, the highlight, the man chosen to headline the very first event of this multi-billion-dollar era, stepped forward and shattered the illusion without raising his voice. No speech. No theatrics. Just brutal honesty. And in doing so, he exposed the fracture lines beneath the spectacle, revealing how the UFC's staggering $7.7 billion windfall didn't fix the system, it exposed it. What looked like progress suddenly felt like a mask. What felt like victory started to feel like silence. And now the countdown begins. Saturday, January 24, 2026, etched into calendars like a warning sign. UFC 3. The launch of the new era. The spotlight fixed on the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The cameras ready. The world watching. And a question hanging in the air that no executive has answered yet. When the lights come on, who is this new empire really built for? This isn't just another fight card, it's the ignition point. The very first numbered UFC event operating under the monstrous new 7-year, $7.7 billion Paramount broadcast deal, the moment the new era officially goes live. For fans, it looks like salvation. Under the old ESPN model, loyalty was expensive, $79.99 for every pay-per-view on top of a monthly subscription, stacking into an annual bill that easily crushed $1,200 just to stay connected to the sport. Now the gates swing open. No more individual PPV fees. No more paywalls. One subscription unlocks everything, $7.99 with ads, $12.99 without. Simple. Clean. Revolutionary. Accessibility becomes the headline. Affordability becomes the hook. And on the surface, it feels like victory. But behind the curtain, the numbers tell a darker story. For the UFC and TKO Group Holdings, this isn't just growth, it's an explosion. The ESPN deal brought in around $500 million a year. The Paramount deal nearly doubles it to a staggering $1.1 billion annually. Let that sink in. An extra $550 million flowing straight into UFC coffers every single year. Production costs. Mostly fixed. Infrastructure. Already built. Meaning that new $500 million doesn't leak out, it stacks. Almost pure profit. And the only real variable cost left in the entire machine? Fighter pay. Fully controllable. Fully discretionary. And that's where the silence gets loud. Flashback to Wednesday, January 24, 2026. UFC 324 Media Day. Justin Gaethje sits in front of a wall of reporters to promote his interim lightweight title fight against the electrifying Paddy Pimblett. The highlight. The Chaos King. The bonus magnet. In 14 UFC appearances, He's earned 14 post-fight bonuses, every single fight, every single time, a performance so violent, so thrilling, so undeniable it triggered an extra $50,000 payout. Consistency, violence, legacy, reliability. And yet, as the billions rise and the profits soar, the question tightens like a choke: if the money is flooding in, why does it feel like it's not flowing down? A reporter, probably already counting imaginary millions in his head, asked what Justin Gaethje had done with all that bonus money, expecting stories of smart investments, luxury buys, or quiet philanthropy, but what came back wasn't glamour, it was a gut punch. With raw, unfiltered honesty, he said, "Oh man, to have 14 bonuses and not have it equal up to $1 million, it's not right." No spin. No smile. Just truth. Then he went deeper. "It should be a lot more than that. I should have had opportunities to do smarter things with my money, but I don't and I haven't." And when you break the numbers down, the math becomes almost disturbing. 13 of those bonuses were $50,000 each. That's $650,000. Then came UFC 300, the war with Max Holloway, instantly labeled one of the most savage, barbaric fights in UFC history, where he earned a special $300,000 fight of the night bonus. Add it all together and the total still falls $50,000 short of $1 million, despite winning a bonus in literally every single UFC fight he's ever had. And that UFC 300 context makes it darker. Holloway landed a knockout with 1 second left in the 5th round, rendering Gaethje unconscious after 24 minutes of career-shortening damage. Blood, trauma, legacy-level sacrifice. And the reward? A number that still doesn't touch 7 figures. Then he pivoted. The Paramount deal. The narrative. The promises. "I hear Daniel Cormier saying everybody is going to get paid more on this card," he said, frustration cutting through his voice. "I'm not getting $1 more than I would have if this deal did not happen." A headliner. Launching a $7.7 billion era. Getting nothing extra. And that's where the question turns lethal. If the man opening the era isn't getting paid more, who is? To understand the gravity, you have to look at the structure itself. Court documents from the Libby vs. Zuffer antitrust lawsuit exposed a brutal reality. UFC fighters averaged just 16 to 18% of revenue. Compare that to the rest of the sports world and the contrast becomes violent. NBA players get around 50% through collective bargaining. NFL players get nearly half. NHL players take a massive share too. Different leagues, different power, different protections. And suddenly the story isn't about bonuses anymore, it's about a system where billions rise, empires expand, and the people bleeding in the cage remain the most replaceable piece on the board. Even the WNBA, a younger, still growing league, guarantees its athletes 10% of league revenue, and suddenly the UFC's 16 to 18% doesn't just look low, it looks like a canyon. A void. A system designed with one side rising and the other stuck. And there's one core reason this gap exists, brutal and undeniable. UFC fighters have no union, no collective bargaining, no leverage. They are labeled independent contractors, which means no healthcare, no pensions, no long-term security, just contracts and silence. In 2023 alone, the UFC generated $1.3 billion in revenue. By the first half of 2025, that number exploded to a staggering $7.75 billion, proof of a financial machine accelerating at terrifying speed. Yet somehow, through all that growth, all that expansion, all that wealth, fighter pay remains frozen at that same fragile 16%. When Dana White, the public face of the empire, was asked directly about raising fighter pay in a GQ interview, his answer wasn't careful, it was cold. "It's never going to happen while I'm here." Then came the justification: these guys get paid what they are supposed to get paid. They eat what they kill. And the challenge: start your own MMA organization if you don't like it. But that challenge collapses under reality, because the UFC controls an estimated 90% of the industry's revenue and elite talent. That's not competition, that's a near monopoly. And inside that system, the financial reality for most fighters isn't tough, it's crushing. Entry-level fighters earn $10,000 to $20,000 per fight. Mid-tier names might gross $50,000. Gross. Before expenses. And the expenses are savage. Training camps alone can cost $50,000 to $100,000. Coaches take 10 to 20%. Managers take another 10 to 20%. Taxes carve out up to 40%. Medical costs pile up year after year from damage absorbed in the cage. And when the math settles, when the dust clears, what's left isn't wealth, it's survival. And this is where the story turns darker, because the numbers don't just reveal a business model, they reveal a system where risk is infinite, sacrifice is guaranteed, and security is optional. Let me give you some real-world examples that hit hard. Former UFC fighter Miles Jury once walked away with a $500 profit from a $20,000 fight purse after expenses, $500 for risking his body, his brain, his future. Let that sink in. And somehow it gets darker. Charles Johnson, a UFC flyweight, actually went into the negative in early 2025, after winning a knockout bonus. His manager had to lend him money just so his family could survive, while his wife was about to give birth. A man scored a highlight reel KO, earned a $50,000 bonus, and still ended up broke. This isn't an exception. It's the system. The UFC has faced antitrust lawsuits for years. The Levi vs. Zuffer case exposed anti-competitive practices that allegedly crushed fighter pay from 2010 to 2017. In September 2024, the UFC settled for $35 million. Payments began in September 2025, spread across thousands of fighters. Anderson Silva received the highest payout at $10.3 million. Most fighters got a fraction. And while the settlement admitted something was wrong, it didn't change the machine. Not the structure. Not the incentives. And that's why Justin Gaethje matters. He isn't just complaining, he is the model fighter the UFC claims to reward. A violent brawler. A human highlight reel. A man who trades long-term health for short-term spectacle. His UFC 300 war with Max Holloway was instantly labeled legendary for its sheer brutality. And Gaethje himself admitted the truth behind the pay. This is my job. I do this for the money. Then the dagger, if I took a heavy wrestling approach, they'd never pay me what they pay me now. That sentence exposes everything. Fight smart, protect your brain, build longevity, earn less. Fight reckless, absorb damage, sacrifice years of your life, maybe you get rewarded. Maybe. And even the rewards aren't rules, they are moods. At UFC 300, Dana White personally handed Gaethje a $300,000 bonus. Not a formula. Not a system. A decision. A moment. A choice. Which means the question isn't just how much fighters get paid, it's who decides, when they decide, and what happens when the spotlight moves on. This is my job. I do this for the money. Then the dagger, if I took a heavy wrestling approach, they'd never pay me what they pay me now. That sentence exposes everything. Fight smart, protect your brain, build longevity, earn less. Fight reckless, absorb damage, sacrifice years of your life, maybe you get rewarded. Maybe. And even the rewards aren't rules, they are moods. At UFC 300, Dana White personally handed Gaethje a $300,000 bonus. Not a formula. Not a system. A decision. A moment. A choice. Which means the question isn't just how much fighters get paid, it's who decides, when they decide, and what happens when the spotlight moves on. The UFC's near monopoly creates a chilling silence. Speak up and you vanish, organize and you disappear, challenge power and your career ends before it begins. Dana White has made it clear, a union will never exist while he's in charge. And as long as that remains true, fighters won't unite, won't bargain, won't secure the revenue shares athletes in every other major sport take for granted. And the contrast is grotesque. Dana White's net worth exceeds $500 million. Mansions. Private jets. Global luxury. Meanwhile, Charles Johnson's bank account went negative after a knockout win. He had to borrow money from his manager to support his family while his wife was about to give birth. Ariel Helwani reported it in early 2025. Charles Johnson's bank account went into the red. His manager lent him money. Baby arriving any day. Big KO. Bonus too. And that's the contradiction that won't go away, billions rising at the top, desperation growing at the bottom, and a system that survives on silence. That tweet detonated the community. Outrage flooded timelines. Disbelief turned into fury. How does a UFC fighter win a knockout bonus in a multi-billion-dollar organization and still go broke? The answer is brutal in its simplicity. The system is designed that way. Once the numbers are stripped down, coaches' cuts, managers' percentages, crushing training camp costs, brutal taxes, medical bills, travel, recovery, their big purse becomes an illusion. The gross looks rich. The net looks empty. Legends prove it. Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters ever, worked construction during his early UFC career, fighting for a bantamweight title in 2011 for $14,000 to show and $14,000 to win. Felice Herrig put it in court documents with heartbreaking clarity. Fighting for the UFC was what I thought was my dream. But after a long career, I left with a worn-down body, severe depression, and nothing to show for it. Justin Gaethje, by comparison, is lucky, he's made real money, invested smart, built stability, and even he says the system is broken. Even he says 14 bonuses in 14 fights should equal more than that. Even he reveals that the biggest media rights deal in combat sports history didn't put $1 extra in his pocket. The UFC 324 press conference should have been a coronation. A celebration. The launch of a $7.7 billion era. A new future for fans worldwide. Instead, it became an indictment. His words cast a shadow over the entire promotion, exposing a structure built on imbalance and silence. Executive promises suddenly sounded hollow. Dana White has already drawn the line. 50% revenue share will never happen while he's in charge. He warns that money destroyed boxing. But here's the twist, the UFC isn't being destroyed by money, it's being powered by it. TKO Group Holdings is booming. Revenues are exploding. Deals are multiplying. The empire is thriving. The only ones not thriving are the fighters. The bodies. The minds. The blood in the cage. And if real change is ever going to happen, it won't come from deals, or bonuses, or press conferences, it will require fighters to do the one thing this system was built to prevent. The unthinkable.